My talk today is as Ray suggested, was to talk about my implementation, my experience putting Concerto and bringing Concerto into Medtronic. Maybe we'll start off with a brief introduction to what is Medtronic. I think Ray did a nice job of explaining parts of it. Medtronic was started in a garage in Fridley 50 years ago by our founder Earl Bakken and his partner, and from those pretty humble beginnings has grown to be the world leader in medical technology, providing solutions to patients with chronic disease. We had our genesis with the pacemaker. We've for the last 50 years have been the world leader in implantable pacemakers. We've also have diversified quite a bit over the last 10 years, and are going into areas, treating such areas as heart disease, neurological disorders, and vascular illnesses as well. We're a large company. We're a multinational company as well, with about $9 billion in revenue, and I'm one of the 32,000 employees at Medtronic. Our implementation is into a high-tech arena. We do product development, medical product development, and we're focused on the implantable technology as well as information systems to bring the information that's stored within the device to the clinician to provide care for the patient. As we talked about, we're a very mission-driven culture. What I mean by that is we're very focused on the customer, and Medtronic has a proud history of innovation as well. High quality is assumed. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been into when we're trying to make a very difficult decision, and someone will say, "What would you do if you were going to put this product in your mother or your grandmother?" So this is it's a pretty powerful part of what we do. The one thing to know, because of that, because we hold people's lives in our hands, is people are very skeptical of adding new process to which may get in the way of that interface between our patients and our customers. So it's into that kind of skepticism that we're implementing critical change. So it's been a bit of a challenge that way. We've had experience with realization and Concerto and bringing critical chain and theory of constraints methodology to Medtronic for about 3 years now. And my experience has been with two implementations. First, with the pilot project, which, as somebody generously pointed out last night, was the guinea pig. I was, in fact, the guinea pig. And we started off with a dedicated project management technique. And this is sort of a roadmap of been my experience. Later, when that project was completed, I took a new position within Medtronic and brought some of the learnings that I had there and implemented them into a portfolio management situation. After the pilot, I was offered a new position in what's called the patient management organization within cardiac rhythm management. And our job there is to provide information, web-based information, internet-based information to the physician. So we have data within the implantable devices, and it's a new startup way of offering the data to physicians via the internet. I introduced to the organization what we call pipeline management, and what we were able to do was to introduce this notion of sort of this top-down piece. Know that in doing this, when I brought this to them, I suggested that this project management and the resource management, task management pieces still have to be there. These are the pieces that you all do every day, that my colleagues still do every day, and we still have to do that. The new piece that we're adding on top is the notion of of asking the question of what business are we in, and driving business priority top down. And secondly, to use this notion of pipeline management to force choices. And when I came to the patient management organization, I found out that we really didn't have the data or the tools or the methodology to really make those choices. Again, Medtronic is a very innovative place, and we have tons of terrific ideas, maybe too many ideas, and we say yes a lot. And so when I came there, we did a simple analysis, and I found out we were something like 100% overcommitted. We had so many things going on. We had people going everywhere. So we said we need to change that, and this evolved over a period of time. So keep this picture in your mind. Know that this top piece is extraordinarily important to implementing pipeline management. Is really asking yourself, running the shop like a factory. And in new product development, it's not an intuitive thing to do, is to run this like a factory. And that's what we were able to do. And the second thing is to force those choices. Don't start a project unless you know that you can finish it. And I'm sure a lot of you read the Goal by Eli Goldratt, and after reading that, it was pretty impactful to me. And I said, we need to identify our constraint. We need to identify our drum resource, our bottleneck resource. And we had never done that in Medtronic, and it wasn't real obvious who it was until we sort of listed out what are the criteria. And for us, they're used by most projects. Okay, well, a lot of resources are used by most projects. That's not very helpful. Cannot be easily increased. Okay, there's some things I can outsource, and there's some things I can't. Okay, inventory stacking up waiting. Oh, this one was really helpful to me. We have our organization flow is sort of a traditional product development. You have sort of the requirements phase, where I have a lot of system engineers, the big thinkers who write down the system requirements, and then I have the developers who write the code and develop the hardware, and then finally I have the verification folks. Everything goes through the verification folks, and in our particular when I came to the patient management organization, I had one guy named Mike O'Neill, whose job it was every 2 weeks to run around and say, okay, we're changing priority. Everybody over here. And then about 2 weeks later, we're changing priority. Everybody over here. So I knew who had all the inventory stacked up. And you looked around and you saw we had this incredible development machine, and they were pushing all of this inventory to him. And as priorities would change, he would have to run around and tell everybody we've changed gears again. We have this three-step cycle, this pipeline management process cycle, which, if you start in the upper right-hand corner, fairly intuitive. We have this plan, followed by commitment, followed by management, and it's a cycle. It's a continuous cycle. I'll go over each of these pieces in turn, and again, stop me if you have any questions. So first is our pipeline planning section. We have, remember the pyramid. We talk first about strategic plan, the product plan, and then we drive into the pipeline priority. We use this pretty effectively working with my partners in the marketing organization, the product planning organization, and said, look, guys, we need to. We have all of these projects going on, but none of them really fit together. Why are we doing this? What business are we in? And they kind of stepped back and said, I'm not sure. We could be in the business to have more revenue. We could be in the business to help our partners in the implantable business. We could be in the business to any number of things. And we realized that we really never asked ourselves that question. And it was through this process that we forced it, because we said we need to figure out what it is that we're doing. And it was out of that we created scenarios. We created a product plan. We could have product. We could choose to do A. We could choose to do B. And we were able to say, if we did A, what projects would we do? If we were going to do B, what projects would we do? And out of that, then you drive the pipeline priority. And then the pipeline priority drives it back to say, okay, well, if you choose to do that and you do these projects, what then? How successful are you going to be? Are they really hard? Are they easy? So the second part is more tactical. So how do you get the information for the pipeline priority? How do you get that into the system so you can make decisions? Really, that's what you want to do, is make choices. And that was something really, frankly, we struggled with, is how much detail do you need to make a decision? And we were able to push back to say, you know what, we don't need a perfect schedule in order to make a decision about what we're doing. Again, this notion of what we're doing here is planning. We're not committing to do a project yet. We're planning, and we're trying to make trade-offs. So we made high-level project schedules. And we had a fairly good base. We'd been doing this a while, and we had some examples. So we said, let's create projects and derive them and model them, if you will, is a term that we've been using, and say it's kind of like Project X, only it's got this, and this new feature. Great. So we were able to do that. We did resource planning, and when we did these high-level schedules, we had a rule that said to use the minimum constraint resource utilization to achieve the schedule. Remember, we defined that picture of 20-some people. I want to use them. I want to use the fewest number of those people I can to achieve my market requirement. And then finally, after I do that, I want to make sure that I have the adequate resources that I need to feed those people, keep them busy, keep them going. And then I do my pipeline planning. And of course, our rule is we can't start a project unless I can finish it. Don't make inventory for these guys and drive them crazy. So this is a picture of our pipeline. This is a picture that actually is created in Concerto, and on the y-axis here is the number of resources, and on the x-axis is time. And all of these different colors here represent different projects. And so we can make trade-offs. And that's what we started to do. So we started off to say, okay, our business opportunity, business priority is A, which means that we would need to do projects X, Y, and Z with these due dates, and that forces this prioritization. We know these people and scope. And so we put this together, and we say, oh, well, when that happened, then this light green project here is too late. So we start iterating. And what can we do? Can we add people? What caused it to be late? So we iterate, refine, iterate, and refine until we had an example of a scenario that worked for us. So that's our planning cycle. When we get to the commitment phase, I think it's pretty similar to what probably all of you guys do, those of you in new product development, is now you go into the more traditional, rigorous network planning, critical chain planning. We're driving to a contract with the business. We make sure that we have clarification or have agreement and again commitment on scope. I've used this to gain team buy-in, because maybe the whole team hasn't been involved previously in this pipeline planning, and I need to get them plugged into exactly what I'm doing. So one of the big things that we worked out was to resolve the changes. So oftentimes what happens when I actually apply a lot of rigor to the schedule, different than the model, we find that we have some changes. And I need to resolve those. I need to make sure that it still fits according to the overall business strategy, and it still fits in the pipeline. Assuming it all does, you can get that all working, you then contract. And then finally make the project live in Concerto. Now we need to manage it. And there's certainly aspects of this managing the way I did back in the critical chain methodology. Certainly you use the buffer history charts. Excuse me. I think importantly for us, we also used this phase, if you will, to nurture the constraint. And to be honest, we have a ton of work to do here yet. But here's some of the things that we've started to do. Clearing the path ahead. I would have a meeting, a daily Scrum meeting every morning with the lead, the guy you saw in the picture on the far right. His name is Mike O'Neill, and I'd say, Mike, it's all about you, Mike. What do you need? It's all about Mike. And he was like shocked. It's never all about me. What do you mean? So we did some things we could to nurture that, to nurture the constraints so that they could be as effective as they could be. This was one of the key things that we did. If you let me just flip back to the previous slide. This is a period of, what is it? It's maybe a year. When I came to patient management, we had one project, which was sort of a snake swallowing a rat, and it was. And everybody was working on the same thing. So one of the important things we did is we broke this into many smaller pieces. And when we did that, we were able to use the constraint resource much more effectively. So importantly, we reduced the project size. Our release size went from, again, a cycle time of a year to we release now every 2 months on average. So that was a pretty substantial change. We do we're moving towards doing a periodic review of pipeline health, but we're actually doing it continuously now, and I think that's probably a little overkill. We have a weekly meeting where we review the status of this. We talk about what's going on with each of the different functions. What are some of the controversies? What do we need to raise up to upper management that needs decisions, that needs attention, and when do we need to? What forces us back into the plan phase? When do we need to go back and replan? Whether it be a project that went out of control, whether it's a business change, whether it's a new product coming down the pike. So what did we learn from this? In the past 2 years, I think we've learned that this is an extraordinarily powerful method to align our business priorities and to improve the velocity of our pipeline execution. We have shown that our predictability has increased as well as the velocity, again, from a release once a year to smaller releases, more predictable every couple of months. We use this data to justify an increase, a lift in resources, as well as a shifting of resources. So we've probably doubled the size of our constraint resource since we started, since we've highlighted that everybody has it on their lips. This is our constraint resource. What are we going to do? And in fact, just last week, we argued for an additional 4 more people. We have outsourced what I call localized shortages. There's a couple of groups that feed into the constraint resource that frankly we weren't terrific at doing, and I found a vendor that who had capacity and was able to take up some of that slack, and they've made that shortage go away. We now don't have that. But I think most importantly, we have impressed upon upper management that thou shalt not start a project unless it meets the priorities and it fits in the pipeline. I wish I could say we always were successful at that, but that's been our mantra. A couple of additional thoughts. What's been key to the success that we have enjoyed so far? I would say probably top on the list is management commitment. I have a very supportive general manager who, on the strength of a month on the job, made an edict that said every project that we do will be in concerto, and we will make a choice on whether or not to start a project based on what this tells us. She uses this tool quite effectively with her peers to communicate why she can't do something or why she needs to do things differently. So that has been very key. Having the resources under management, I showed the kind of chart showing the matrixed roles. That I think has been quite important as well. This is probably the most important one. Is we have buy-in and we have coordination with our partners in marketing on how we're going to initiate a new process. So in conclusion, in my experience, in the right circumstances, pipeline management is a very powerful tool to increase product pipeline velocity and align product development with business priorities. Do you have any questions?
Can you quantify approximately how much additional capacity you've released by going into pipeline management?
It's going to be awkward and difficult to do that because our business has changed so much in the last year and a half. But probably the best metric that I have is that we have gone from doing, before we started doing this process, we were on average doing a release every 6 to 9 months, and we're doing now every 2 months.